call our special meeting to order. Can't hear. Can't hear. I'll call the special meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Wimpy. Here. Parks. Here. Lester. Here. Udi.
Here.
Thurman.
Here. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Really appreciate the good attendance. Everybody's interested in what's going on in South Broken Arrow. And I want to give it to Vice Mayor Scott Udi and let him welcome, and also Mike Lester.
Thank you, Mayor. Wanted to take a few minutes and welcome you all to Ward 4. Now, if we were across the street to the west or across the street to the south at the 131st, you'd be in Ward 3, but since it's my ward, I get the mic first. And we debated this, trust me. I know that each and every one of the counselors up here has been watching what's going on in South Broken Arrow with great concern and is hearing from, we've heard from you, and I'm thrilled to see this many people here to address and hear from us on this, and hear from the people who know what's going on these topics. Because I live just 2 miles north of here, north of here, and I drive by the intersection at 101st and Elm twice a day, and I see what's going on. And with great, since I live down here, I think it's one of the prettiest parts of Broken Arrow, but at the same time, I'm watching these challenges, and I'm seeing things that we hoped would come to fruition that aren't. And so we want to hear from you all. We want to answer questions, and we want to be able to work together to address these issues and come up with plans that can see this end of town just as successful, just as vibrant, just as beautiful as every other part of town. So again, thank you and welcome to Ward 4. I look forward to hearing from you, as I'm sure each one of the counselors here do, and appreciate you being here. Now,
I'm not sure where seniority didn't come into play here, but I too want to welcome you tonight, and am greatly pleased to see the large number of people here tonight. I'm entering my 11th year on the council. As many of you may know, I am a native of Broken Arrow, grew up a couple of miles east of here, and have watched Broken Arrow grow from the 7,000 people it was when I graduated from high school to the 110,000 it is today. One of the things that I have appreciated about this council is it doesn't matter what part of town we represent. We are all interested in seeing economic growth in all sections of Broken Arrow. So in my early years, the growth was in the northeast part of Broken Arrow, and that's where we concentrated our money. Today, the growth is in the southwest quadrant, and we need to concentrate our efforts in this part of town. Several years ago, I was involved through the chamber in an effort to try to help revitalize the 101st and Elm Place Four Corners. We were not successful in that, but I will assure you that this council and everybody on it will do our best to try to revitalize that area, as well as bringing more economic development further south. So we appreciate your interest and your input tonight and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and turn it over to City Manager Michael Spurgeon and get the presentation started.
Thank you, Mayor. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Thank you, Mayor Thurman, members of City Council. I've had the privilege, and I consider myself to be blessed to be serving as Broken Arrow City Manager, and I'm about to enter my second year, finish my second year, I should say. And about a year ago, I started hearing from a lot of residents about what's going on in South Broken Arrow. And the culmination of those conversation and comments actually ramped up this past January. And so the administration went to the city council back in May, and I recommended that we put together this meeting because there has been a great deal happen in South Broken Arrow and to prime the area for development. And so we felt it was important to talk to the citizens directly about what has happened. And so what I'd like to do right now is just give you an outline of what's going to happen this evening, and then I'll have some opening comments, and then we'll get the presentation started. So for tonight, the citizens and businesses that are here are going to hear directly from some of the department directors. You're going to hear from our assistant city manager for operations, who's going to talk about the public infrastructure improvements that we've made to date. Then our development service director is going to talk to everyone about the development that is going to be happening in our part of the community, especially those projects that have been approved. And we've also invited officials from our Economic Development Corporation who will talk to us about the direct recruitment efforts that are ongoing to try to bring additional businesses to this part of our community. And then last, we will have the developer of the shops of Aspen Creek that will speak to the audience about his direct efforts to try to bring businesses to his development. And then afterwards, which is extremely important to the council, is to give the citizens an opportunity to ask questions that they may have that were not addressed within the presentation. So what I'd like to do now is just make a couple remarks from my perspective as city manager, and then we'll get the presentation started. The purpose of tonight's discussion is to talk about economic development and how we can all promote the growth in South Broken Arrow. I've been a city manager for almost 30 years, and what I've learned is successful recruitment of business and industry will look different in each city, that there is no one-size-fits-all solution for economic development operations. Generally speaking, I believe economic development is a process of building a strong, adaptive, and sustainable economy. And to accomplish this goal, there has to be a vision, along with some adaptable short-term objectives. On the other hand, what is necessary is for city officials to establish a clear vision and direction for economic development operations, and it is their responsibility to go out and to communicate and advocate for this vision. Keeping the long-term vision in mind, what can the city do to help promote economic development within its community? And I think it's very simple. I think it's the responsibility of local government to create what I call a public sector environment that promotes and supports private sector investments and reinvestments. The city can't build any business. It's our responsibility, however, to make sure that we have a business-friendly environment in place to support those people that want to make the investments within our community. And I believe there's three main ways that we can do that to help create that environment. And you're going to hear about what we've done over the last 7 to 10 years to do so. And the first is maximizing the use of our public utilities when possible. And secondly is we have to have a comprehensive and a supportive planning, inspection, and permitting process in place to make sure when people want to make investments that they find the process is simple, it's straightforward, and that when they're going to work with the city or inspectors is that they're able to bring their projects out of the ground in a timely manner. I also think it's very important going forward that you have an organization that leads an economic development effort, because the bottom line is, if you think about what city government does, a lot of our decisions are citizen-driven. Economic development is about market-driven. It's about being able to work with the private sector to convince them that they can make investments in a community and they can get a return on their investment. And the city has that model, and later this evening you're going to hear from members of our Economic Development Corporation who spend all day trying to recruit businesses and to help those businesses that are already here make reinvestments in our city. So at this time, what I'd like to do is just have everybody step back for a minute and let's talk about the north side of Broken Arrow. Because a lot of the conversation is there's a comparison on what's happened to the north versus what is happening in the south. And having only been here 2 years, the first things that I was told was Bass Pro opened its doors about 13 years ago. And that didn't happen overnight. The development that's there today, it actually took well over a decade to have Bass Pro and then the Target project to where you have the growth that you have today. What the council at the time and the councils today have learned is this: if there is no infrastructure, it's going to be extremely difficult to attract businesses. And so for the last 7 to 10 years, the city council, both the previous city councils and current city councils, have made major investments in the public infrastructure in this part of the community to prepare this area for development. So what you're going to hear is about those developments, and then we're going to talk about the challenges that still exist within South Broken Arrow to attract businesses to our community. And with that, I'm ready to get the process started, and so I'd like to turn it over to Kenny Schwab, the Assistant City Manager of Operations, who's going to discuss the public infrastructure improvements that we've made.
All right, thank you very much. First of all, this is an incredible crowd. Thank you for coming out. It doesn't surprise me that Broken Arrows support our community like this. I'm thrilled to be here and talk about the infrastructure. So as Mr. Spurgeon said, infrastructure, public infrastructure. So when you hear me say infrastructure, I'm talking about streets, sidewalks, and then our utilities, our water, our wastewater, and our stormwater systems. What have we done on the north side a little bit, and what have we done on the south? So when we started looking at this and trying to put this together, I went out to Google Earth and said, well, let me just take a look at what Google Earth has on some maps. We have some out in the foyer that will actually show 1995, it'll show 2002, 2011, and then current 2017. But what I want to do is go up to the north end and try to point this out a little bit. So if you look over here to this one, here's the Broken Arrow Expressway. Here's Aspen, here's Elm, so this would be Lynn Lane or 9th Street, and then 23rd County Line's right here, and then this is Kenosha, Albany 61st, and then up a little bit. This is 1995, so for the public that have been here, the residents that have been in Broken Arrow for many years, you've seen Broken Arrow change on all realms, but if you'll remember, north of the Broken Arrow Expressway, prior to the late 80s and really early 90s, it ended. There was not a lot of development. And you can see all this green space just on the north side. Again, this is Elm and this is 61st. So look how much opening we have at that location. So what changed between 1995 and 2017, 22 years? First and foremost, public investment. The public investment. The first thing that changed was in 1986, Broken Arrow Public Schools, trying to get away from the community, needed more land, went out and built the complex, the high school, the university out there in the north end. First graduating class there was 86. But public improvements, the public funding began to change immediately in the 90s. So from about 1990 to around 94, you see a lot of funding coming in from the state government, ODOT. They widened 4 bridges, raised them and widened them over the highway. It was Albany, 61st Street, Elm, Lynn Lane or 9th Street, and then Kenosha, 71st Street. At that same time, right there around 91, 92, the city of Broken Arrow started improving 71st, Kenosha, and Lynn Lane. So the city started pumping in dollars. Now with the high school out there, shortly thereafter, 23rd County Line, Aspen as well, the city north of the expressway. In 1993, ODOT widened the highway from the 4-lane undivided to the 6-lane right now, divided. So you start seeing a lot of public investment. That's mid-90s. So the public investment comes first, and then all of a sudden you started seeing a lot of residential development follow that public money. You started seeing the Battle Creek subdivisions. Now the Battle Creek Golf Course also went in, which we had funding in that. You started seeing First Baptist Church go up there. So all of a sudden you start seeing a lot of residential, some of the churches and the schools built again. So fast forward to 2017. So we had that big wide open green space, not so wide open anymore. This is the same area. This road is Elm, and this went through. So public money, the investment in our community kicked off residential, and then commercial followed. So let's take a look at South Broken Arrow. So this is 1995, Google Earth. You see the corridor that's open here. Look at all the open space. A lot of you moved out to the south of Broken Arrow because you had more space, more green space. It's beautiful. This is 1995. Pocket over here, you see a lot of the open space. Let's fast forward to 2017. Well, now the turnpike came in right around 2000. Public, that's OTA, public money still. And then the city partnered with OTA and got the ramps at Aspen. When the turnpike went in 2000, everybody that lived out here in South knew every 2 miles is what OTA did on the ramps. But we went back and asked to have more ramps. We paid for that. OTA partnered with us. That came in. And now you start seeing Walmart fill in. And now here's Warren Theater. Here's the development that we'll be some of the development we'll talk about. That was green. That's filled in. But you still see a lot of green space. So really 2000 to 2010, you start seeing public investment dollars. Now you're starting, as Mr. Skates will talk about, what comes after the public investment, you're going to start seeing the housetops. You also hear the developer and some of the economic development people talk about traffic counts. Traffic counts. That means a couple different things to different people. To the infrastructure group at the city, it tells me where my vehicles are. I need to know for my roadways. For economic development, it tells them the same thing, traffic counts. So if you look here, here's northern Broken Arrow, and you can see, if I can find this again, 1995, 2015, here's 51st Omaha, Albany, Kenosha. Just quickly, Aspen and Elm. These were not in our city limits back in 1995. 8,500, 20,000 in a 20-year period. 27,000, 41. Now, Kenosha didn't grow too terribly much. Look at Elm at Kenosha. Still about the same. But you see a big difference on the north end. Let's take a look at the south. So here's 101st, 111th, Tucson, 121st, 1995, Aspen, so 20,000. 20 years later, 27,000. About 11,000, 20 years later, just over 16. 7,100, almost doubled. And that's probably what a lot of you are seeing right now. Now look at Elm. In a 20-year period, not a big change at 101st and Elm, about the same. Good population, good traffic control, but about the same. So that's our arterial streets, our public. We've got a couple more slides to talk about, well, the Turnpike and Highway 51. How did those look? So if you look at the Creek Turnpike, this is really westbound and eastbound. Here's Garnett, 14,000, 13,000. 129th, which is Olive, 13,000, 12,000, and then Elm's only 11,000 and just under 11. So those are kind of low traffic counts on the Turnpike. Let's go look at Broken Arrow Expressway. 93,000 vehicles a day. So this is a total account over the course of a 24-hour, one day. So at the major intersection, Aspen and Broken Arrow Expressway, we have just under 100,000 vehicles a day. And then as you get closer to county line, just about 43,000. So the population through the vehicles, traffic counts, are higher on the north end. That means a lot to the developers as you move forward. Let's talk briefly about some of the improvements on the south end only, okay? So here's New Orleans. This, I believe, is Olive, Aspen. Here's Elm. This is 9th Street. So you're taking about a 3-mile section here and a couple miles this way. So here's the Turnpike. The roads, here's a mile that has been built on New Orleans. Some of it's widened. Most of it's, we have about 11 miles that have been widened, and anywhere from 2 to 5 lanes, and then we also have 3 to 5 lanes, and we have some resurfacing. So you can see a lot of the work that's been done. The dash lines are roadway projects that are planned and currently, probably in the next 2 to 3 years, are in the budget. We're not talking 20 years out, we're talking immediate window. We also have water line. Here is 101st, or New Orleans, and Lynn Lane, 9th Street. There's a new water tower that we're looking at constructing here to provide better pressure and more water service. This is a 24-inch line. The solid blue is built in the last 8 to 10 years, really about 2008. The dash line is planned. It's being programmed, in progress. Here's another 16-inch water line, 2 miles that have built. Another 16-inch water line to tie back in. What do you need for development? You need water. You need sewer. We just completed just over a mile of a sanitary sewer upgrade, 15-inch line. We have about 2 miles in progress on Manger sewers. So this is the development that we've, the shops at Aspen Creek, the roadway network and water line. So this map can easily be made available, but let's go to the last slide for me. Constructed on the transportation, the projects that I just showed you, in the last 8 years, over $30.3 million has been constructed. In progress, still another $6.5 million. In progress means I'm in design, I'm getting right away, I'm ready to construct, probably really in the next 2 to 3 years. So a total on the transportation of $36.9 million. Utilities, again, the water and the sanitary sewer. We've only constructed about 2.8, but we have almost 6 million programmed, ready to go, and are trying to get some funding. This does not include any improvement to the wastewater treatment plant because that serves the whole community. Public safety, fire station, we built one just north of the Creek Turnpike in Aspen, $4 million. In progress, we're designing right now another fire station to be in the south part of town, so a total of 8.5. So totals across the board is just constructed just over 37 million, programmed just under 17 for a total of just over $54 million currently, really the last 8 years. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and pass this over to Michael Skates, our Development Services Director.
I'm going to stand up here so I can see you and you can see me. I see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd tonight, and I'm truly honored to represent the city and speak in front of you this evening about development. I am the Development Services Director for the city. What I wanted to do was talk to you a little bit about some statistics and then show you a couple maps of what we're seeing happening in the south part of the city. And I think you'll find it to be quite astonishing of the growth from the maps that Kenny showed to where we are today and where we're going to go in the future. Statistically, overall in the city, we have an average household income of a little over $86,000. We have a medium household income of a little over $70,000, and the average age is 38. Comparing north to south, within a 3-mile radius of the Warren Theater, where everybody knows where that's at, and then in comparison to the Target up on the north side of town, the average household income in the south part of the city is quite higher than the north side. And you can see that on the slide there where it's $89,000 for the south within a 3-mile radius, $90,000 in a 4-mile radius of Warren Theater, and then $80,000 compared to $84,000 in a 3 and 4 mile radius around the Target. This next slide here and the next slide I actually have on boards out front, and myself and quite a few of my staff will be here after the meeting and can answer questions, or you can look at the information a little bit closer. But I wanted to kind of show first the numbers associated with current development going on in the last 4 to 5 years and projects that are forthcoming to Broken Arrow. And on the left side, you can see about 10 to 12 different subdivisions that you all can drive by. You can see some of them you can drive through. Houses are coming out of the ground, and we're about 39% built out. On the right-hand side under review, you can see where we have additional subdivisions from developers that are planned that may not have actually started just yet, but are forthcoming. And together, between those two and then some additional housing in current subdivisions where there's empty lots, we have upwards of 2,000 homes in the process over the next 4 to 5 years. And I can tell you that Broken Arrow leads this region, if not the entire state. And when I say region, I'm talking about northeast Oklahoma, northwest Arkansas, we lead the region in home starts, and we have for decades. And our population continues to grow because, you go to the next slide, because as I showed on the previous slide and this slide, I know it's kind of small, and you can have an opportunity to look at it later, but the green shows those existing housing additions, the yellow houses show proposed, and in comparison to the maps that Mr. Schwab showed, it correlates directly with what we're seeing. And I can tell you that Broken Arrow is very attractive for developers for a multitude of reasons. Not only are we very customer friendly, we want to help people develop, we want to help people with getting things coming out of the ground, but our land, for the most part, is still relatively low cost. We have exceptional schools. We have exceptional public safety. We have great parks, and we have great infrastructure. And that really attracts families and people from other areas to come to Broken Arrow. And as you can see, if you look at these housing additions, there are different price ranges that take place within them. I also, and it's a little hard to see on this map, but I identified a few commercial properties that we've been working with, and I can tell you that we have others that are in the planning process, but I can't really say if they're coming or not, but we've met with some folks. And then I kind of showed some of the schools. They're up in blue, so you'll have an opportunity. It shows up better on this one's behind me. But like I said, those are out there. You can go to the next slide. And then this last map is a little bit hard to see, but what I tried to show here was in our city, we have a comprehensive plan. In that comprehensive plan, we have a land use map. And in that land use map, we identify by colors different districts of development. And so, as you can see, there's a lot of orange. That's level 3. That's what we call transition area. That can be quite a few different things. It could be housing. It could be multifamily. It could be office. It could be converted over to commercial business. The level 4 is commercial employment nodes, and those are typically at the intersection corners. And then the last one there is level 6, that's regional employment and commercial development, probably usually more of your heavier commercial like the Warren Theater. And as you can see along the turnpike, we've established those areas for commercial development. And on this map, I can point out that just on the north side of Aspen, on the northeast side and the northwest side, those properties actually belong to the city of Broken Arrow, and I've identified where the fire station is located, fire station number 2. And so we have land there that's prime for development. But I hope this kind of gives you a quick snapshot of development and where we are. But we have multifamily projects. We have 2 that have just recently finished, and I think that we'll probably have more in the future. But density is what sometimes helps drive commercial development. And if you don't have rooftops, it's difficult to have commercial development. But we've been able to build that over the last 10 or 12 years in the southwest part of the city. And I'll be available after the meeting if you have questions.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Wes Smithwick with the Broken Arrow Chamber and the Broken Arrow Economic Development Corporation. I'd like to thank you for caring enough about your community to come out this evening and listen and ask questions. A few things. What is the Broken Arrow Economic Development Corporation? About 10 years ago, through a collaborative effort of the city, the Broken Arrow Public Schools, and the Chamber, the Broken Arrow Economic Development Corporation was founded and created with the primary purpose to grow Broken Arrow's economy through primary job creation. Jobs and new jobs are what puts more money in our economy, where we have more money to spend. In 2010, the scope of the Economic Development Corporation was enhanced to include retail development. Prior to that time, there was no concerted effort in Broken Arrow to actually go out and recruit retail and restaurant. It was done because the sales tax dollars generated by retail and restaurants are vitally important for funding your city services. So when we had what is a tremendous amount of leakage where people would go into the city of Tulsa and buy goods and services, the sales tax generated by that went to pay for the firefighters and police officers in Tulsa and not the ones in Broken Arrow. So our city government felt it was very worthwhile for us to start actively recruiting retail to stop what we call leakage. And then in 2012, the Downtown Redevelopment Program was added to the work that we do in our office. How does retail recruitment work? It's not infrequent that I get an email or Cody gets a phone call in our office saying, we want you to get us a Cracker Barrel by the Warren Theater. or we'd like a Red Lobster at 101st and Elm. And my favorite one is we'd like an IKEA in Broken Arrow. I wish it was as simple as that. I wish it was as simple as picking up the phone and calling or going to see them, which we do those things. But there are a number of variables that go into play that determine where businesses go. But the bottom line is this: businesses go, restaurants go, stores go where they can make money. If they don't think they can make money, they're not going to come to a particular location. So what we've tried to do is identify companies and developments where there's a match. The first way we do that is through marketing our community and a specific site to developers. We do that through participating in events around town. We do that through proactively reaching out to developers, whether they're in Oklahoma or not. We've routinely met with people from as far away as Charlotte, North Carolina, and California. We also, through various programs, reach out directly to Cracker Barrel and directly to Red Lobster, Darden Restaurant Group, and other retailers, trying to get them to consider Broken Arrow for a location. Now, we cannot make them go anywhere. What we can do is introduce them to locations within our community that we feel is a good fit for them demographically. We participate actively every year in multiple International Council of Shopping Centers events. These are massive trade shows for the retail industry, where every major retailer, restaurateur, hotel, you name it, anybody who's in the commercial development business, they go and they meet and they try to make deals and they try to find new places to go and grow their business. Norm will talk in a few minutes about one of those particular meetings he and I had a few years ago. We work, and our team works here with brokers and tenant representatives throughout the area. It is not uncommon for national retailers and restaurants to work with a local broker to help do their site selection process. I see a number of people in that business here tonight, and they can also talk about that. I think it's probably most important to understand site selection criteria. I mentioned that we cannot force a business to go any particular place. But what I can tell you is that every single restaurant or retailer has its own unique methodology that it uses to select a site and to determine whether or not putting a location, whether it's at 101st and Elm or 51st in Albany, 51st in Aspen, is a place where it would make money for them. Some brands want a certain number of rooftops within so many miles. Some will not locate a new store within X number of miles from an existing store. So I'll give you a concrete example. On the north side, when IHOP opened, everybody knows where IHOP is up there, it had to be exactly and no less than 5 miles from the next closest IHOP. Okay? IKEA is famous for wanting a population of 2 million people in a 40-mile radius. 2 million people. Other brands focus on household incomes. Many fast casual restaurants and fast food pretty much focus exclusively on traffic count. If you, for reference, look at Lynn Lane between Kenosha and the Expressway, and they're all the fast food restaurants there, that's because that little section of road is the most highly trafficked piece of property in Broken Arrow today, and that's why they locate there. Home value matters to some. Educational attainment matters to some. Areas with lots of children matters to some. But another one often overlooked is what's called daytime population. when Charleston's first opened by Bass Pro, pretty close to it, it struggled desperately for lunch business. Higher end restaurants cannot survive without a restaurant crowd at lunch. And so you have to have people there to eat lunch. And so one of the many areas that we look for is ways to stimulate daytime population in the area, meaning people who are working nearby, or making the access easier for people working nearby to get to an area where they can frequent a place for lunch. Another thing that we need to think about today is the changing retail landscape. The retail world is changing rapidly. Raise your hand if you've ordered something online in the last week. Raise your hand if you've ordered groceries online. How many have ordered Blue Apron or HelloFresh? You know, all of those habits change. How many have ordered a television online? All of those things have changed the whole retail landscape. And in order to lure customers to a more brick and mortar experience, the whole retail industry is having to change. The day of planting big box retailers like Walmarts and Sam's Clubs and Home Depots is rapidly fading away in favor of smaller, more boutique places. And some believe that in the next 5 years, the whole way we buy groceries in America will change fundamentally, driven by online shopping and delivery services. The strip center in the Power Mall has been replaced by a multi-use lifestyle center, it's called. People like to get out and walk about and be in an environment that they like. So a lot of changes that are affecting site selection today. And I also want to touch just one thing about how retail areas cycle over time. I want you to think back, those of you who've been here a while, to 61st and Memorial. In 2000, 61st and Memorial was a booming area. There was an Atlantic Sea Grill, high-end shops, a TGI Fridays. But within a few years, it went poof. But today, 10 years later, it's a vibrant, growing shopping area again. But it's transformed. It looks very different. There's an Aldi grocery store there. You know, there are other types of shopping there. So it's very common that retail centers over time cycle and change. If you think about 101st and Elm, it's been suffering for quite a while. Around 2002, I think it was, Kmart closed. Now, Kmart didn't close there because they didn't like Broken Arrow. Kmart closed there because it's been going out of business for the past 15 years. And our store was one of those that originally was closed. It wasn't long after that Albertsons closed. But it wasn't because they didn't like Broken Arrow. It was because Albertsons has suffered financially for many years, and they closed a bunch of locations in Oklahoma. So that intersection has been struggling for a while. There are a whole host of reasons, and Norm Stevens is going to talk to you about that as he comes up here now. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Norman Stevens. I've been a part of the city of Broken Arrow for going on 34 years, and I'm the economic development coordinator for the city. You know, the other day I was driving from my home into work, and I got caught up on 51 highways that was coming into our city around 81st Street. And as I got to thinking about when I was sitting in line with one lane, and it's been going on for a year, and the cars are backed up, and I'm needing to get in there, I thought of this. I said, who's responsible for this? Who can I call up and yell at because I'm not happy? Who's going to take the blame? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the economic development coordinator for the city of Broken Arrow. Now, when Mr. Spurgeon said we're going to do an economic development summit in the south part of the city, my first inclination was to tell him I was busy tonight. And unfortunately, that didn't work. My responsibility is just that. It is to bring retail development into our city. But my most important job is to go out and work with the Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Corporation to bring in manufacturing and good-paying jobs into our city. Economic development deals with good-paying jobs. You recruit those good-paying jobs into your city, retail development's going to follow it because they want to be where the tax dollars are. They want to be where the money is, and they're going to come on in. And we do that. We do that on a regular basis. We did that just recently with Alpha Laval. I don't know if any of you saw it. Anybody see how many jobs that a partnership that we worked on for 18 months are going to bring in hundreds of jobs and hundreds of thousands of square foot of manufacturing space. So that's what I spend some of my time doing, but I spend a great deal of my time working to bring in retail development. And I want to tell you why retail development is so important. Oklahoma is a little bit different than any other state in the United States. I don't know if you all ever knew this or not, but sometimes the way we do it's not the best way. And the way that our state doles out funding, in my opinion, is not the best way. Because the way that municipalities are able to function is off sales tax dollars. Wes made a comment, I'm going to be the first one to raise my hand, that I've been guilty of it in the past. How many people bought something off Amazon and failed to report it on your taxes so that sales tax would be taken out of it? I've done it. Well, unfortunately, the last I checked, Amazon doesn't have a police department or a fire department. City of Broken Arrow does, and the way we fund that's through our sales tax. So I go out and I work every single day to try to bring in retail because it's going to earn sales tax that's going to help make this city grow and thrive and give you better services. And it has changed. I've sat there and I've watched developers who were chasing and saying, hey, we can get a Bed Bath & Beyond, or we can get a large-scale business in here, and all of a sudden those places are all going and shutting down. Or they're going from 55,000 square feet to 25,000 to 15,000 square feet. It is changing. I work every day, every single day with the development corporation that Wes heads. I work with his staff. We are constantly putting out calls. We're putting out feelers. We're putting out contacts trying to bring people in. Another one of my responsibilities, along with Cody Mosley at the Economic Development Corporation, is we go to ICSC. ICSC is the largest show where developers, site selectors, and retail show up to figure out where they're going to go in the United States. Most of these places, and I'll give you a great example, Home Depot. Home Depot may be getting ready to put in 3, 4, 5 stores across the nation this year. That's it. And you got to go out there and you got to try to convince them to come into your city. And we go to Vegas in May, and we go to Dallas in November, and we walk, and we walk, and we talk, and we show them the city of Broken Arrow. I'd like to tell you, or maybe I wouldn't, that I'm constantly pushing the north end of our city. I don't. Cody doesn't. We don't have to anymore. We haven't had to for the last several years because the available space, prime space in the north part of Broken Arrow, is shrinking. People know it's there. You saw the traffic counts. What we do, and if you'll go to the next slide, is we push South Broken Arrow. We push South Broken Arrow all day, every day when we're at these conferences. We have a magazine that the Chamber puts together. I provide them some information, but it's really, they do all the heavy lifting. It's called the Grounds for Development. The last 3 years, 2015, 16, and 17, that's the cover of the Grounds for Development. The first thing they say when we hand that to them is we say, let me tell you about the south end of our city. And if you go in there and you start to look at different parts of it, we point out the south end and we lay out all the good things that are down here, and we try to get them to go ahead and look at our south end. Then we try to invite them to come out here. If you ever have thought for 1 second that the city is intentionally trying to keep retail out of your southern part, let me assure you, and I'm standing in a church so I can't lie, let me assure you That's the last thing that we're doing. The reason this man hired me was to bring in retail development, and that's what I do. We do it through a variety of ways. The best way that we can do that is through infrastructure. And that's one of the reasons that Kenny Schwab, our assistant city manager, spent so much time showing you the things that we've done out here. We've just put in, and it's not a fun thing to talk about, but we've just about spent close to $1 million for a sanitary sewer line that will serve this whole south end. And that's just gone in the last 9 months. The infrastructure is here. What we have to be welcoming, to bring people in for retail development and additional housing has been put in place. It's been paid for by the dollars, the tax dollars of you folks. And for that, we appreciate you. There's other things that we do to try to bring folks in. One of the things that's a tool is the sales tax incentives. And that is that we can take in X amount of sales tax, and we may give some of that back to the retailer to help them defray their costs to locate here. For them to come in and put a site in here and to build it up, put in parking lot, put in everything that it takes, cost a lot of money. And sometimes their profit margin is very, very slim. And here's what I'm going to tell you. If they don't know 100% that they're going to make a profit, they're not coming. If they don't think that the area is to the point where it is going to produce the sales that they need, they're not coming. They will eventually come because what we have in place and what you're seeing is building to where it needs to go. We've done TIF districts. We've done one so far. And that's where you take an area that's blighted or is not performing that well, and you come in and you dedicate the future sales tax and ad valorem tax to go towards paying off that TIF note. That's the reason that we did it, and we did it for to take care of existing jobs because they were coming in and highly recruiting flight safety to remove them from our city. Our city council realized we got to do something. We can't let flight safety move to the state of Texas or somewhere else. So we put together a TIF. And they thought enough, and they said, hey, let's see what we can do for our downtown. And out of that came the Rose District. And out of that you see all the development that's taken place there, both with public and private partnerships. Vision. It's looking at something down the road where there's nothing and imagining what it's going to be. It happened with NSU, that our city leaders thought, in the 90s, about a university out in the middle of nowhere on the east side. It's a wonderful facility. Our city council thought the same thing about the Creek Turnpike. They also thought, hey, let's go out and let's purchase some land that's around Aspen that may help with retail development in the future. This was going all the way back in 2000. They also said, hey, let's go out and let's work with the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, and instead of every 2 miles, let's get an interchange on Aspen to where when cars come up there, they can get off, and they can have access to the retail development that will come in. They also started 15 years ago when they started talking about this deal called the Warren Theater. And then 5, 6, 7 years ago, when the gentleman who's going to talk to you next, Mr. Signorelli, came, and I began working with him, and he said, hey, let's put together something that is going to be world-class and is going to bring the Warren Theater in here and serve the community, serve the region. And that's what we did. You know, some people look at the shops at Aspen Creek, and they say, well, is that a failure? You've got the Warren Theater, how come there's nothing else there? Friends, I'm going to tell you right now, the shops at Aspen Creek is a success, and it's for this reason right here. I go out and I do these retail development deals, and I have a company say, yeah, we want to locate, and then I come to the city manager, and the city manager comes to council, and we say, hey, we got to figure out how to get the infrastructure in to support this. This development out here is one of the things to where all of it's in. The infrastructure is in, the roads are in, the lights are in, the water's in, the sewer's in. Only thing we need to have is one person, 2 people, 3 people say, I'm ready to move in there and bring their shovel, because it's ready to go. That's exciting for the south end of our city. That's exciting for everyone sitting in here. The city also thought enough, and we have 2 parcels of land that are on the Aspen, one north of the Creek Turnpike, or I'm sorry, both of them north of the Creek Turnpike, one on the west side, one on the east side. They're about 20 acres on each side. And we use that not just for trying to recruit retail down here, but one of the things that you've heard over and over, and I've got it on one of my slides, and I'm not going to spend a great deal of time because Wes did such a good job, but we do that to try to build daytime population. Because in order for a restaurant to be successful, they need daytime. In order for retail and stores to be successful, they need daytime population. But you know what? There's a company called Costco. And about 4 years ago, Costco, Wes and I got an audience with them at ICSC in Dallas. And we sat down with them and we're saying, what can we do to try to get Costco to come into our city? And I made a phone call back to City Hall and I said, what can I do? What can we offer these folks? Because that's going to be a big deal. And we decided that we were going to offer them a long-term lease on some of that city-owned land at a greatly reduced price. Not free land, but doggone close to free land. That's a heck of a deal, isn't it? Well, after we told this guy that, as we were talking, he pulled out a map and he drew a circle. And he said, gentlemen, I want to be somewhere around 111th and Yale. Because 111th and Yale is the area where they fill the basket the best. That's where they're going to come in and we're going to get the most bang for our buck. And so we're trying to figure out what else we can do. And shortly thereafter, they put in a store on Memorial. That is something that I can't compete against. I can't compete against that traffic count on South Memorial. The biggest impediments I have on the north end of town is Woodland Hill Mall. I have been fighting against Woodland Hills Mall for my entire time of doing this. I can't replicate what's there. In the south, I can't replicate traffic counts that are on Memorial. There are many things they look for, as you've heard: traffic counts, rooftops, daytime population, distance to existing stores, household incomes. 101st and Elm. 101st and Elm, when I came here back in the 80s, was booming. It was it. We had Kmart, we had Albertson, we had Safeway. We had a lot of different developments in there and a lot of different stores. That's where everybody went. That's where you went to eat. The hospital ended up leaving the area, St. Francis. Some of the businesses started relocating, and that area has continued to go down. We've recognized it, as Councilman Lester said. We've looked into what we should do to try to reverse that trend. Hobby Lobby recently left. I had a lady come up to me at the Home and Garden Show, hope she's not here, and she said, why did you move my Hobby Lobby? And I said, ma'am, last I checked, I don't work for Hobby Lobby. We didn't move her Hobby Lobby. But what Hobby Lobby saw was those things that I was talking about on the north end of our city, and they moved, and they built that store. I called up the developer who runs that, a gentleman with Philco. And I said, Robbie, what did they tell you was a reason to move when they moved? And he said they wanted to be on the north end where things were happening, where the traffic counts. That was it. That was what they told me they wanted. So what we've decided to do is we sat down as a staff and we said, what can we do? Everything we've talked about on the redevelopment of 101st and Elm hasn't worked. So we went to City Council. In the City Council, we presented the information, and they requested the Economic Development Corporation put out a request for proposal for a feasibility study for the New Orleans and Elm. And I think it's probably going to take around 6 to 8 months. And we're going to go out to the businesses on the four corners, the people who control all that, and we're going to ask them to share in that with us, to share in the cost for that study, because they have to have the skin in the game that we have the skin in the game. And we're going to see what we need to do to make that area viable again. I don't know that it's going to look like it does right now. It may. I don't have any preconceived idea, but I know we need to do some things to make it different. One of the people I dealt with for the last several years was Mr. Danny Signorelli of the Signorelli Company. We're going to ask him to come up. He is the one who put in the shops at Aspen Creek and explain to you a little bit about his development.
Norm's pretty tough to follow. He might have some preacher in him. Yeah. Well, I appreciate being invited to come and speak, and from a developer, from the private sector part of this, I'd like to first tell all you guys, we develop quite a bit in Texas, and we deal with a lot of city council, we deal with a lot of economic development groups, and the team that y'all have are entrepreneurs, not politicians. They are leaders, they are visionaries, and they are the types of people that, in sitting here and listening to everybody speak, it reminds me of why I got excited about coming here and developing the shops at Aspen Creek over 5 years ago. And I'm going to talk about it. Y'all have been here a long time. I'm going to try not to be redundant because they've all done a great job, speaking like a developer. And there's really not a lot of folks that do that well. But it is about the rooftops at the end of the day. We've got a slide up there that talks about the critical components. At the end of the day, it's about mobility and visibility. It's about employment base. It's about all of those household income, all of those discretionary income, where you've got the rooftops with folks living there that have the money to go and spend at the restaurants, to go spend at the stores. But let's go to the next slide. We've got the difference in the mix. Wes talked a bit about how retail's changing. We saw that a decade ago. And so in our developments, we've gone after and sought mixing things like movie theaters and entertainment components with the conventional power center pieces where you have your grocery stores and the types of retail that follow. There's other mixed-use components they are that residential piece, because if you can put a nice multifamily in the middle of a mixed-use project, you're increasing density. And those types of things really help the presentation when you're talking to a restaurant or a coffee shop or any of the multitude of conveniences and quality of life pieces that you guys like to see out here, and we would certainly like to deliver. If you look on the screen now, you see the overall plan for the shops at Aspen Creek. When we first got involved with Councilman Lester and Mayor Thurmond and Norm and the whole team, the talks of a Warren Theater had been bounced around for years, and that was a tough one to land. But at the end of the day, it required a commitment and investment from the city, and it required a tremendous commitment and investment from us in going after a regional draw like a Warren Theater. I mean, folks probably don't realize that, and I don't know this for a fact. I know it's the #1 theater in Tulsa. It's probably the #1 theater. It's short of the Moore Theaters. It's probably the #2 theater in sales, in generating sales tax in the state of Oklahoma. We're based out of Houston, and we're currently developing the largest retail project in the entire state of Texas. It's 1.5 million square feet of retail and mixed use. To put it into scale, in going after Warren Theater, we had to prove an area. And so all the conversation you've heard about demographics and rooftops and the comparisons of South BA versus North BA. Well, when we're looking at going into a project, we're not looking at the short run. We're looking at the full development. Part of our model is we want to get the bones in place, the structure in place, so that as we get those critical pieces, like the Warren Theater, and as those critical pieces prove the market, then we're able to get the right types of restaurants, the right types of stores, and at the end of the day, we end up with a more successful project. Now, we've all heard real estate, it's location, location, location. And North Broken Arrow fits that definition to a T. South Broken Arrow, not quite yet, but it's a heck of a lot closer today than it was 5 years ago when we became involved with Broken Arrow. And a critical piece of that is our Warren Theater. When we delivered the theater, we knew that by bringing it and making it economically advantageous to the Warren operation, that once they got here and they were filling the parking lot and generating great sales, that others would look at that and say, okay, well, that's proof that the water might be okay. And so it's retail is absolutely the herd mentality. There's not a whole lot of pioneers or entrepreneurs out there. As Norm said, I think talking about Hobby Lobby opening maybe 5 stores across the United States of America. Well, there's a person that's sole job for Hobby Lobby is to go and find the 5 best, safest places to go. And the last thing that person's going to do is risk his job and be a visionary or be an entrepreneur or make a bet. They don't bet. They don't bet on football. They don't bet on site selections. They're probably not any fun at all. But everything that everybody's working on and all the pieces that we have in place are extremely exciting, not just for us and for everybody that's talking up here. I think you could probably see the excitement because we're not apologizing about poor demographics. Did y'all see the average household income in South BA? It's the tops. It was the tops 5 years ago when we got involved. We saw a green area with an opportunity where people aren't, developers that do what we do for a living aren't focused in this area. They're not out there competing. So we see it as an opportunity. We know that it won't happen overnight. And although we'd love to click our heels, push the easy button, do whatever it takes for it all to happen, it's exactly what we expected, which is the #1 theater and great development coming that follows. They've covered anchor tenants. We've talked about regional entertainment, restaurants and stuff. We do have on the next slide, we're pretty excited about some of the small pieces that we're starting to move on. And I think we have one more slide here that shows what we would expect to break ground on, and our target is about 6 months from now. We'll bring a nice Starbucks and a great Clips, and we're in talks with a couple of restaurants that would fill up that the first vertical piece that's right at the intersection when you're pulling into the theater. Now, part of our strategy is we don't want to go out and put small development out on the large parcels of land until we have the key pieces, the key anchors, the key types of users that help define a whole portion. So if I've got 45 acres sitting there as a whole, and we're chasing 5 or 6 different types of users, whether they're entertainment or they're retail or they're grocery or whatever, you don't want to go out and I call it laying up. We don't ever want to put anything to where we set a ceiling on how great the project can go. So we protect those areas, and we'll develop the small pieces, the pads and things of that nature as the market gives it to us. So retail's excited about the multifamily. They're excited about the quality of it. They're excited about the sales of our Warren Theater. And they're excited about the progress of watching the population growth and watching the traffic counts grow. I mean, all of those things on everybody's radar. And I can guarantee you this: there's not a tenant out there that doesn't have Broken Arrow on their radar, because they've been hit from every direction, from pretty much here all the way down. And but at any rate, we're excited to be here. We're excited about where it's going. But it's I mentioned for a second about our project in Houston. That's the largest retail project in the state of Texas. And to make a quick comparison, we acquired that land from 1999 to 2006. And from 2006 to 2014, we did little pieces. And in 2016, late 15, we broke ground on the largest retail project in Texas. So with 1 million square feet, 500,000 is open, the other 500,000 is under construction, and phase 3 will break ground on in another 3 or 4 months. The only reason that's happened is because we've been patient and we focused on the key anchors and the right quality drivers. And that's the same dedication, and that's the same model, and that's the same effort that we put forth here in South BA, and we look forward to the results that we expect to deliver. But thanks for having us.
We've got 3 people have signed up to speak. I don't know if anyone else wanted to speak. We've got Dr. Patrick Otto. If you would come up and give your name and address and ask your questions.
Patrick Otto, 701 East Albuquerque, Broken Arrow. First of all, thank you very much, folks. This has been very informative. We appreciate the time that you put, obviously, to prepare for this. Thank you, sir. That was good news. I've been waiting for a Starbucks. That's good news. My question is just simply, you were talking about the feasibility study, and I appreciate the feasibility study, and my question is that the normal process? Is that the same thing you did for the development for Bass Pro and all of the target area, and then also for the Rose District? Because those both came out very well. And I'm just wondering, are you following the same general steps for South BA as you did for those two areas. Thank you.
The reason we're doing the feasibility study at 101st and Elm is because nothing's working down there right now. You'll see there's been highs and lows there as things come in. We had some success by the come and go that came in there, and then behind it there's the tool store that came in, and they fixed it up to where it's. Can I hear? Okay. I'm sorry. So, they did some redevelopment there that was different than anything that we had. But the problem we see as we drive around, you have these massive parking lots with the buildings set way back with a bunch of little doors. And maybe there's something we can do on the public part of it to come in, and maybe there's something we can do, whether it's a TIF or it's working with the people who own it to really give it a big shot. Some of the things that happened in the downtown with the Rose District came out of a ton of meetings and research out of the Economic Development Corporation and the Chamber along with City Council. We got on buses and we took trips. We talked to people in Texas who had successful downtowns. As far as the Bass Pro, that was a green area. There was nothing there. So that was starting off from scratch. But that was one of those, if there was kind of a slam dunk, Bass Pro. If you can get Bass Pro, you're steps ahead. So it's a little bit different animal. Thank you for your question.
Let me follow up on that real quick. That's a great question. With regard to the request for proposal that the city is going to do for 101st and Elm, what the schedule or steps are going to be is we're going to reach out, as has been mentioned earlier, to all the business owners and their agents, and we're going to ask for them to get together. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to let them know that we're willing to invest public dollars to have an RFP prepared, which we will bring a consultant in, someone that has the expertise that coming in and looking at areas that are in need of redevelopment. As a part of that, we're going to ask those owners, all of them, and there's multiple. It's not just 4 or 5 owners. It could be 20 or 30 different owners from what I understand. So we're going to ask them what their vision is. What are their plans for their development? I mean, we have residents every day that contact us that would like to see more development or more redevelopment in that area. We're going to ask them to participate in the study that needs to be done. The council has said that if they will not participate, we will still complete the study anyway, because we'd like to see what options are out there. Once that study is completed, and that'll probably wouldn't happen until sometime in 2018, then those results will be presented on behalf of the EDC to the City Council, and they will outline recommendations on what could be done in order to redevelop those areas. As Norm said, it could be that there could be some incentives that the city can do to try to incentivize the developers. But in the end, it takes a partnership. It takes the private sector, it takes those business owners willing to make a reinvestment in their property if the city is willing to support that as well. And so we will keep everyone informed as we go through this process. The EDC is going to talk about the council's request tomorrow at their meeting. And I'm sure from there they will start the process of putting together the specifications for the request proposal. And the goal is to have that before the council before the end of the year and a contract award, and then we'd go forward from there.
Next we have Linda Young.
Lesson number 1, sit closer to the mic if you're going to talk. Lesson number 2, make sure there are more than 2 other cards that are yellow filled out before you get up here. So my name is Linda Corbin Young. I live at 4019 South Date Avenue in the Hidden Springs Edition. I've been there since 2009. This has been great to hear, and if you could get a bagel to go with my Starbucks, I'd be really happy. So what I wanted to talk about is a more pragmatic piece of this and sort of a challenge to the council and to the community and how we can help each other with a particular piece of this. A new penny is great, and we all love the shiny new penny, but sometimes we need to polish the old ones, and that's what I'm asking you to help us do in the older communities around 101st and Elm. If the goal is to attract new businesses, or worst case, retain the ones that are there, I think we need to look at a couple of the really obvious problems. And when I drive in and out of my neighborhood, that obvious problem is West Quantico. When we have piles of trash and discarded furniture that I go out of town on business and 10 days later I come back and they're still there. When I see that the only time there's not trash piled at the street is 2 hours after the trash trucks run. When I see, today I counted 11 lawns where the grass is between 16 and 24 inches high. Those are things that we need to address. And I know that we have the Action Center, and I appreciate that, and I'm one of the people that uses it. So I've seen blight in other cities as part of my business travel in Baltimore and Cleveland and other places. I don't want to see that in Broken Arrow. But that neighborhood is beginning to rival some of those places I've seen. And I think we need to look at that because anybody who wants to put retail at 101st and Elm is going to drive by and all they have to do is look right, okay? They're coming north. So I think that we need to look at that. And so what I would like to say is, what can we do? What can the city do? What options do we have to improve that, to put pressure on the landlords to keep it up because it's all duplex rentals? And how can we leverage the changing nature of what was the Freshman Academy to possibly bring in businesses that are more family-friendly and that would encourage some growth in some other pieces of that? So those are my two questions for you. Thank you.
Those are great questions. And, you know, obviously if you drive through Broken Arrow, we have the home ownership or the pride in home ownership in our community is off the charts. And it is extremely difficult to find property that are not in compliance. However, we do have properties that at times fall out of compliance. And we have a code enforcement and inspection division within development services that is very good with working with property owners to address the problems that exist, or if a property falls out of compliance, to get it back into compliance. And so Michael Skates, who you heard from this evening, has made a note of this, and we will go look at those areas. If it's a trash issue, then our general services division will address it.
Thank you. Next, we have Michael Joyce.
Good evening. My name is Michael Joyce. I'm an attorney in Tulsa, and I represent landowners and developers all over the place, from across the country, California to Florida. I also represent the owner of the Hobby Lobby location. And obviously, we're here to see what the city is doing. So, representing developers and property owners, first of all, I would say I would thank the city of Broken Arrow, and I would congratulate the city of Broken Arrow on some of the successes I've enjoyed with the city on behalf of my clients. I painfully sat through Michael Spurgeon's budget presentation, which went for hours at city council meeting, but it was so nice to see that the city of Broken Arrow actually had a surplus, a budget surplus, because the retail dollars have come to the city of Broken Arrow. I would say, though, that they've migrated to the city of Broken Arrow, or they've been cannibalized is maybe a harsher word by the city of Broken Arrow. And when I say they've migrated or cannibalized, where'd they come from? They've left the city of Tulsa. They've largely the city of Tulsa, because, gosh, you talk about blight in a neighborhood. I was totally depressed driving here from the city of Tulsa today through the weeds that are 4 feet tall, the streets that have, you know, they call them the vanishing streets because they say the asphalt. Well, it's the weeds that are growing from the curb 2 feet into the streets. So if you want to see blight, go to the city of Tulsa. But sales tax dollars are migrating here to the city of Tulsa, and I heard all sorts of work. And I'm not here for the city of Tulsa tonight. I think it's done a very poor job of managing its city and working with its surrounding neighbors, and frankly with the state of Oklahoma to do a good job for the region. So I'm here to talk about concerns to my client, which are largely regional in nature. So I've written down hundreds of words here based on your presentations, and some of them I'll throw out there. They're critically important to developers. And a lot of the developers that I work with and represent, they're leaving Tulsa, they're leaving Oklahoma in droves. They have no more appetite to do business in the state of Oklahoma. And where are they fleeing? They're fleeing to Texas, they're fleeing to Colorado, they're fleeing to Florida because they have one thing in common: booming, vibrant economies. And I hate to say it, but from my perspective, the overall economy in Oklahoma is going nowhere but down. So the words that I look at and discuss with my developer clients and my property owner clients, and we work hand in hand. I work with a lot of national retailers and property owners and developers. And we talk about jobs. We talk about education. We talk about regional stability. We talk about saturation and cannibalization as well. So these are huge issues that I think the city of Broken Arrow needs to be talking about with its neighbors and with the state legislatures. We are failing. I'm sick of seeing the national news stories about where Oklahoma ranks on the list of the top 50. We're usually at the bottom in jobs creation, healthcare, and certainly education. And unless we work cooperatively on a regional basis to fix those, it doesn't matter how many Starbucks we bring or Chipotle's we bring. We're going to fail. We're going to fail as a state, and certainly the city of Broken Arrow. The city is doing a much better job than other cities in their region, but again, I see it as cannibalization. So for Hobby Lobby, move from 101st and Elm over to where, and who asked, you stole my Hobby Lobby? You did. You stole our Hobby Lobby. With the infrastructure that you installed and developed at one area of the city versus the other, and talk about north and south, you've promoted a move of one retailer. There's not enough growth in the city. There's not enough business to support 5 new Hobby Lobbies or 5 new Starbucks. They're going to move from one location to the other based on infrastructure, unless we can do a better job in overall development with our neighbors, the city of Tulsa. And believe me, I have these same conversations with the counselors and development folks in Tulsa and frankly around the country. Regions need to work with each other to develop jobs, and in this state in particular, education, not just Broken Arrow's education, but overall, so we can hear stories about, hey, we have 10,000 new technology jobs that have moved to the region instead of the loss of TV Guide, the loss of WorldCom, the loss of Dollar Thrifty, the loss of National Alamo. These are companies with tens of thousands of cumulative good jobs that have left the region, which then creates a poor or a weak economy regionally. So I would encourage, aside from congratulating you on the good job you've done on seeing some new growth here, I would encourage the city to not just study 101st and Elm, but study the region and form groups, if you don't already have them, where you talk with your neighbors and say, what can we do to make this a better environment for job growth, and pressure our state legislators for education so that we have true growth, not cannibalization and migration. So, thank you.
Thanks, Michael, and I'm sorry that I bored you with my budget presentation. I heard several things in your presentation, and I will try to address them. You know, first off, respectfully, the tax model for municipalities in the state of Oklahoma, in my opinion, is broken. We are heavily dependent upon sales tax to support general government services in all municipalities in the state of Oklahoma, and as a result, we are forced to proverbially cannibalize in some regards because we are in heavy competition for retail businesses. You make those purchases of goods, and then those tax dollars come back to us, and we turn those tax dollars into services for police, fire, parks, and so forth. It is a challenge. It is an absolute challenge. And secondly, with regard to education, it's not my goal to have a race to the bottom. And last year, the mayor and the city council and I, working with the school district, presented several options for trying to increase the pay for our teachers, because it is a workforce. And the number of individuals that live in this city that are teachers, it's an amazing economy. It's a workforce that is not being taken care of, and they're leaving just as well. And so we are having those conversations. Now, as far as regionalization, the city's a part of a group called Cities United that meets once a month. It's always on the third or fourth Thursday of every month, where all the cities in the region get together and we talk about the issues that are facing us to do exactly what you say, Michael. And as a result, some of the things that have come out of there has been the repurposing of the vision tax, which the voters in 2015 approved to get additional revenue to hire police officers, firefighters, and to add $3 million a year for general road maintenance. And that came from those regional discussions that we've had, and we will continue to have those, because every city in this state is struggling with trying to come up with enough money to be able to pay for city services. And it's not just being able to pay for public safety. When you take care of public safety, you've also got to take care of your parks. You have to take care of your streets. You have to take care of all of your operation. You have to take care of your property maintenance to keep your property in compliance. So we agree with what you're saying, and we're having those conversations. It's just in a highly partisan environment, it's extremely difficult to convince people to make decisions about personal property taxes and sales tax. And so far, no one's been able to convince the legislature that we need to implement another model.
Next, we have Aaron Gaddy.
Hi, I'm Aaron Gaddy. I live 7701 Briarwood, just across Elm over here. I've been in Broken Arrow since '89. We moved here from southeast Missouri. I grew up here, 101st and Elm. That's why I'm here, just due to the fact that it was home to me for so long. I went to South Intermediate, worked my first 4 jobs in that intersection, different retailers. Personally now, I'm grown. My kids are grown, my kids are grown, and I'm looking at a kind of a new phase in life where kind of being taken in a different direction as far as wanting to be more involved in my community, not essentially focused on just what's in the household, but what's outside around me. I'm a firm believer in we can create the future that we want, but nobody can do it by themselves. Some of you up here know me from being pretty active and involved recently around the chamber and around the city. I specifically chose to start my business right in Broken Arrow, where I grew up, and moved back here for that reason. I'd been away for a few years just living out in the country. And due to the fact of, and I looked around different areas, but just due to the fact that the activeness that the leaders in this community take into really promoting and not just promoting, but sustaining long-term growth for Broken Arrow. So many people look at the short-term, quick money makers, but here it's all about what's going to be best in 30, 40 years down the road. So I want to say thank you for putting this together, and thank you for all of your efforts for what you guys do. I do have a question. Like I said, not all of us can do it. None of us can do anything big by ourselves. But as a community, what can we do on an individual basis to help spur additional sales tax, or spur growth, or help create the future that we want in our community?
A big thing, and I'll stand up, but I don't know why anyone would want to see me better. I think a big thing is shop local, shop in town. It takes a concerted effort to do that. I'm thrilled because now I can buy anything I want in Broken Arrow, except maybe a decent man's pair of pants. Someone wants to put a men's store in, I'm your shopper. But I think that's the key item. Is please shop local. If you're in your car, and it may take a minute to go to 111th and Elm or 111th and Memorial, a little faster than to go to 71st or Kenosha and County Line to Lowe's. But you know what? Take that extra minute and go to Kenosha and County Line, because that money stays here. That comes and that pays your fire, your police, and your streets. So that's a key item, in my opinion, and that's what every one of us in this room can do, is shop local, buy local, spend local. And I love Amazon. I've used them before. And I won't tell you whether I registered my taxes or not, but, and that serves a purpose. But you know what, really? And it's any online realtor or retailer. That is money you're spending that doesn't come here. Now, Amazon has reached a pact with the state, and so some of that comes back to us. But all those online retailers, they don't send their money back to us. And if we don't report it, it doesn't come. So bear that in mind when you're making that purchase. And so I know that's probably too simple, but in my sense, that's the first place to start, is shop here in town. And then that way we can reinvest and do the infrastructure projects and the things that need to happen so that we can grow and continue to provide retail opportunities. So that's my 2 cents worth.
I'll stand up too, since we started the standing up. So one other thing you can do is, everyone here, if you go and frequent a business anywhere else in the metro or anywhere else in the country, tell that business how important it is that you need that business in Broken Arrow, that you would come and shop at that business in Broken Arrow. So if you know everyone that's involved in any kind of retail business, or when you frequent retail businesses, let them know to come to Broken Arrow. But again, as Scott said, whenever you go shop or whenever you dine somewhere else, when you call 911, no one from Tulsa comes to help you, or no one from Amazon comes to help you. And so it's important that you provide we provide that service, and it's important that you shop here, you dine here, and get everyone you know in that any type of retail business to come and locate in Broken Arrow.
I will make a comment now. My name is Johnny Parks. I'm a city councilman. Thank you, Mr. Lester. I appreciate it. Councilman, I've been a city councilman, twice in 2 different times, one from 1979 to 1995, and then the last 6 years. Tremendously excited to see such an involvement of people at this tonight. And you say, how can you help? This is one way you can help, is just get involved, know what's happening. We have been interested in the southern part of the city. We don't look at it as the northern or the southern part of the city. We look at it as the city of Broken Arrow. I was on the council whenever we dedicated the road that the turnpike's on now. I owned a plumbing company for 30 years. I lost 25% of my business in 1 month when that happened, because everybody along the turnpike didn't like it. We as a council felt like that it was going to be the future. As Wes has said, it takes jobs, and we thought that turnpike would bring a lot more jobs. And I'm still hopeful that it would do that. The public-private combination of those $2, those 2 monies, those 2 efforts is of prime importance. We don't have a lot of money in the public sector to give to the private sector and to work with. But what we do, we need to take our time and spend it wisely, and we do that. Wes does a good job. He could be the first to tell you that I'm pretty stingy with the city money when it comes to taking it to the private sector. So I feel like that Wes does, and the chamber does a great job of getting us the best bang for the bucks that we have for the city, because we still got to, as mentioned, we still got to pay for the police, fire, our parks. You know, my goal has always been to keep our property values as high as we can, because a lot of us, that's the biggest investment that we have. As you travel across the state and visit with other people, everyone knows of Broken Arrow, not just the Rose District, but they know that it's a strong community. You talk to anybody in the rest of the communities. So I think that the council certainly is making that effort. With your help, that would certainly be of benefit us to be involved. Look, just as he mentioned, look at where you can get involved with different committees. I remember when 101st and Elm Place was the center part of Broken Arrow. And I made this comment the other night at the council meeting. we at the council in the 70s and 80s felt like that would probably be the city center and would be the biggest growth area. But yet with that public-private investment, a downtown that had essentially died was brought back to life. So we feel like that maybe we'd like to take the whole city, but if we take a little bit at a time, it can go from there. And my final point is we talked quite a bit about funding and the way the state handles the funding. It would be wise on your part, something you wanted to do, is look how other states, cities are funded and visit with your legislators. Try to get them to, I won't say do something because there might be some in here, but try to get them to really be involved in helping us become a stronger city. So visiting with your legislators would really help that. But above all, thank you for your involvement. It just really did us all a lot of good to see so many people here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I'm going to go and turn it over to
Let me
Michael.
just say one thing is, one of the things as a growing community that we depend on you is for our bond issues. If we continue to grow as a community, we have to continue to have bond issues to continue to expand our road systems, to keep them maintained, to upgrade our public safety, our infrastructure. All of the things that it takes to make this a great city depends on each of you getting out and voting each time that we have a bond issue. So what can you do? One of the important things you can do is each time we have a bond issue coming up is get involved. We have one coming up next year. Become involved in the issues that are important to you, to be included on those bond issues, and then get out and vote and get your neighbors to get out and vote, because without passage of those bond issues, we will not continue to grow.
One of the things we wanted to do was give folks that might be a little shy an opportunity to ask a question without having to come before the microphone. So I have a list of questions here that have been submitted, so I'm going to read these questions. Some of them have been already answered. However, I think it's important for transparency that everyone's question be presented. So what I'm planning on doing is someone on the panel or in the city council may want to answer a question that has been answered. So this is not in particular order. The first one is the corner area of 101st Elm and Elm blighted? Is a TIF, a tax incremental financing district, grants possible? We're going to determine that as a part of a study, okay? It's very, very careful when you talk about blightedness because there are property owners involved. And so that's a part of why the study is necessary to make that determination. The second question was there's a rumor that Reese's is not staying and it needs to be remodeled. Reese's, as I understand it, has signed a 3-year lease and that they're going to stay there, and until they're going to stay there until we know that they're not going to be there, okay? Now, I will tell you is that there was interest in developing in the south part of Broken Arrow to bring a supermarket, but the incentives that that business wanted were well beyond what the city was willing to pay. I mean, these are your tax dollars. So we take it very seriously when it comes to offer incentives. Ultimately, it's tax dollars that are being taken away for the services that can be provided to the city. Also, is now that Applebee's is closed at 101st, we have another empty building. Understand that there's a rumor that the tool store may be moving as well. I know nothing of the tool store moving. Applebee's did close last week as a part of a corporate decision to close about 135 to 150 restaurants. The one on Memorial closed, for example. However, the one that's in the north side of town, it is still open. So that was a decision. Obviously, it was an internal return on investment decision that they made corporate-wide. The next question is, there are a number of housing developments underway in South Broken Arrow. How many more rooftops are needed to attract the businesses you are pursuing? Well, Mr. Skates said that there's approximately 1,900 units left to be built. If you look at the household income, it's the highest in the city. If you look at the traffic count that's going to add to the area, it's extremely positive. And you heard the developer from Aspen Creek talk about the additional rooftops is going to help. For me, maybe Danny could answer this as a developer. Is there a magic number that you feel would actually generate additional business?
there's not a magic number, but velocity of growth is critical. So if retailers see that population is growing and it's, you know, if a typical area is growing at 5% or 8%, and they see that Broken Arrow is growing by leaps and bounds at 15 or 20 or 25%, those types of things come into play. But if we look at the slide we saw earlier, it showed difference in traffic counts on the north side versus here, and we're looking at 100,000 daily traffic count versus a 25,000 daily traffic count. So you're talking about a lot of different pieces that come into play. Magic number, there's not one, but everybody's looking at a 3-mile radius and a 5-mile radius, and I would say that the type of growth that we're seeing, it won't take too many years for that to really move a lot of needles. I want to speak on something just because we're talking about 101st and stores moving, you know, like the Hobby Lobby going north, and some of these other guys that have left. It plays into that herd mentality. And so it's also like defense, because when one store closes, you know, even if it's, you know, Applebee's who's closing 130 stores, when these stores start to relocate, they're following the herd. So wherever that activity is, they do 10-year and 15-year leases for a reason, because at the end of that lease, they want to look around and say, all right, is it still good here? Am I still at Main and Main, or did Main and Main move? And so there's a lot of maintenance that goes on with that, and so the comments about making sure the areas don't feel blighted or critical, and all the new development, new growth are also drivers that really support the whole area.
Thank you, Danny. Okay, the next question, is it true once again that researchers will be moving away from 101st that's been rumored for some time? I want to take a different approach answering this question. Is that one of the things the council has directed the administration and the Economic Development Corporation is that if there is an existing business within our community that wants to relocate to another area, they're going to have a very difficult time justifying getting in any incentives from the city because of the fact that it's cannibalizing or taking away from that area of town. And so we will be looking at that very, very closely should someone that is already here want to go somewhere else within our community, because it's just moving tax dollars from one part of the city to the next. Okay, the next question is, what are the facts or theories that explains what's happened to the area 101st and Elm? Why is this a problem? This intersection has attractive and consistent traffic volume. Yes, it does. There's approximately 25,000 cars that go by there every day. That's why we need to meet with the owners. We need to find out from them what their vision is and what challenges that they're having, and then actually have the consultants come in to see how we can work together. So really, I think that's a question that hopefully this time next year we'll have some more clarity on. Okay, the next question is, what are you doing about the replacement of Applebee's? I would like to suggest rib crib. So would I. Okay. Believe me, you know that it's a blow when you lose a business. I mean, everybody kind of sinks their head, and it's hard. But it's about confidence, and I think the comments from the council members about the importance of shopping local is extremely important in this time. But certainly is, you know, we will contact Rib Crib. I'll ask Norm to reach out to Rib Crib and ask them if they have any interest in going there. I had one resident come up tonight and hand me the business card and said, there's a business in Tulsa wants to come over here, but they want to open a new store. And so, you know what, we're going to reach out and make that call. The next question is...
They're putting a hideaway in the one on Memorial, so maybe that's somebody we reach out to as well.
Okay. How much tax revenue is being lost to Bixby from Broken Arrow residents in the central part of the city due to the lost businesses in central BA? That's a very good question. There's a lot of folks that live in this part of town that actually go over to Memorial and shop. I do not know exactly how much that is, but I can tell you is 8.5 cents of every good that is spent over there, the total dollars is actually going to the city of Bixby or to South Tulsa. And more importantly is, I want everyone to take away tonight on behalf of the council is, we have put in the infrastructure, we are actively recruiting, and we're going to continue to try to grow the economy down in South Broken Arrow to attract more businesses. So folks, you know, right now, we want them to have more choices. And that's the one thing that the council and I hear on a constant basis is give us more choices in the south part of town. The council and myself and all of the staff at the EDC want those same choices as well. And I think we're primed ourselves to be able to see that happen as we get more rooftops and the traffic counts grow in these areas. But certainly, we do lose business, and I'm sure Bixby and South Tulsa appreciate that. But once again, it's important that when our police officers, when they're called, or our fire department, or the parks need to be taken care of, that's paid for with sales tax. So we would ask you to, when you have those choices, to please consider our city. Okay, here's one. It says, what are the plans for Warren area? How can we attract restaurants? I think Mr. Signorelli talked about that and the challenges. So I'll move on to the next one. Okay. Next is, why does Broken Arrow allow continued growth on the outskirts of the city instead of redirecting growth to the central part of the city, i.e. 101st and Elm and Aspen? Okay, so I believe that we've answered that question. But I will tell you is that the one thing that the city council has done is we have made those reinvestments. We are making those investments. And Mr. Schwab talked about the cost of those investments and the investments we made. One thing that he didn't mention specifically is the cost, as I understand it, I was not here, but to put that exchange on the turnpike on Aspen was over $6 million. So the city actually took money out of its reserves and actually from its capital improvement fund to put that exchange there. And without that exchange, we probably would not be having that conversation this evening. So that's a type of investment that the city's willing to make. And once again, when we do the study, we should have a better idea on what recommendations there are that we can work with the business owners to try to implement those recommendations. Now, as far as businesses being built on the outskirts, basically, once again, that's where traffic counts are. That's where the rooftops are. And at this point in time, you can see it in the north, and I think we're starting to see it in the south, and especially with what's being planned, is we should see additional businesses. Okay, Broken Arrow, here we go. I didn't read this one. What are you going to fill in the businesses such as Hobby Lobby and the Indian restaurant? What happened to our property values and businesses closing? Obviously, folks, it's a concern. This is about the 5th time this has come up, and so we recognize that. And obviously, if there is an area that's in a downturn, we have a responsibility to go do what we're doing. And that's one thing I want everyone to take away, is we recognize what our responsibility is, and that is to try to improve that environment. And we're going to do that with making a commitment to have that study completed. Okay, here's one. Is Sprouts coming? Okay, I'm assuming it's the South Broken Arrow. I would love for a Sprouts to come. I would love for a Whole Foods to come. Norman didn't mention it because he could have stood up here all night and answered questions about Cracker Barrel. He could have talked about Sprouts. We've made those calls. We've had those conversations. And every time we do, they tell us either the close proximity of an existing store. There's one on Memorial. They tell us the traffic counts or the household incomes. We do not meet that internal criteria to be able to justify an investment. One of the questions that was asking me before the meeting started was, where are we at with Home Depot? We've approached Home Depot. Home Depot was one of the large boxes that they actually tried to lure here and was to look at on city property, and they said that, you know what, the traffic counts do not justify that at that time. And so the takeaway for all of you, I would ask, is that we are out there making those conversations, and we'll continue to do so and continue to provide updated numbers, the data, because a lot of these decisions are data-driven. And so we'll continue to have those conversations. Every time we have improvements, additional homes, we will make sure that those site selectors are aware of the growth that we've had in this area. Okay, Broken Arrow, it says, how can city officials encourage owners of large buildings, older development in parentheses, improve facilities to encourage new leases? Can city enforce on older development and require parking lot landscaping and islands? I'm going to let Michael Skates take that because he's an expert in terms of what our development rules and regulations call for.
Well, we can't force development to upgrade their current infrastructure or site infrastructure. What we do is we watch closely along with you all, and if property falls into disrepair, has broken windows, signs that are missing in their freestanding monument signs, landscaping that has died or is falling or dying, we address that. We engage with the property owners, and we provide letters. We provide assistance as necessary in identifying what sections of our nuisance code or our property maintenance code that they're in violation of. And we give them time to make those repairs. And if not, we follow through on other actions. When developments decide to redevelop, like the southeast corner of 101st and Elm, we engage with that developer. We talk about their plan. We identify ideas and concepts out of our zoning code and our comprehensive plan that can better the location. There's nothing worse than when a large box vacates a space and leaves 100,000 square feet empty, because many of you all notice that when that happens, property goes down quickly. I don't know what it is. When somebody's in there, the walls look good, windows look good, parking lot doesn't have grass growing in it. As soon as somebody leaves, all these things start to appear. And so we work very closely to identify options for them to redevelop. We look at landscaping. If you look at that southeast corner, we encourage them to create an outlot. There's actually 2 outlots. One is come and go, and there's one just south of that they're actively looking for a restaurant. But when you look at that shopping center and the parking lot area compared to the other 2, you can see a better use of the parking lot with current landscape requirements. And so hopefully with the study that we're fixing to do and the consultant, we're going to work with the property owners to look at ways that we can look to the future of what it can be and how can it be redeveloped, how can we redo facades, is it going to be mixed use, is it going to be single occupant businesses, and how can you divide up a Hobby Lobby space into more attractive uses for entrepreneurs to open businesses. You all and people out here have wonderful ideas that come to us every day, and I'm always amazed at the ideas and the entrepreneurship that people have, and our job is, how can we help you? How can we help you? How can we make it work? And that's what we do on a daily basis.
Keep it, Michael. Another question for Mr. Skates. Any council members want to follow up on that? Okay. Now here's the question. There's 2 questions. The first one is there more planned high-density living apartments in South Broken Arrow? And the second is, when are we going to get some decent internet service?
Well, I could probably answer the first one. I can't answer the second one because I don't operate internet services. But as far as multifamily, we've seen 2 very successful projects, one with Case & Associates and another one with a developer out of Arkansas, I believe, or maybe Missouri. But I'm strongly encouraged in my conversations with the developers that additional multifamily will occur along the turnpike and in various areas. I believe that they're looking at locations, but they haven't really settled on a location because they, like commercial development, kind of wait to see what's going to happen. And right now, the most encouraging numbers that I can tell you and what you can see on the ground is the housing population that has grown in the southwest part of the city. Schools drive part of that. Mr. Spurgeon mentioned earlier about the economy of the school system and what that does for a city. And, we work very closely with the school system and their staff on locations of schools. And typically when a school is planned and built, housing and other types of commercial development follow it. It's happened with Liberty. It's happened with Highland Park. It's happened with Centennial, and I believe it's going to happen with Timber Ridge. And I believe that the schools will eventually, as development continues to occur in the southwest part of town, you know, so there's that driver involved as well.
As far as the internet, better internet service, I'm not able to answer that question, but I could certainly talk to anyone that has a concern, and then we can reach out to, we know the providers that we have in the city and let them know there are some concerns. I mean, I apologize, I just, you know, it's not something the city has control over. But if there are concerns, enough folks, if you let me know, and then we can reach out to the government officials for those entities.
I do know that Windstream is working right now in increasing their bandwidth across the city, and they've got, I think, a half a dozen or so neighborhoods that have the whatever the highest speed internet service there is. So it's their desire to move that across Broken Arrow over the next several years.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay, this next question is a road maintenance question. Is there any plans to fix the intersection of Olive and Jasper? Truck traffic has made it very rough. This question came from Mr. Bates, and so if you could stick around afterwards, Mr. Bates, I can visit with you. If you're still here, if not, then we'll make a phone call and we'll let you know. We'll get somebody out to take a look at that. Okay, this is a question. What is the long-term plan for the former Indian Springs Elementary building? So I asked Mr. Schwab to take this because he was speaking to one of the assistant superintendents.
Yes, actually, Broken Arrow Public Schools did attend the meeting, and when I saw that question came in, I texted him to kind of get an answer for that. As many of you know, and some of you may not know, the City of Broken Arrow and Broken Arrow Public Schools are two completely different entities. Broken Arrow Public Schools owns Indian Springs. Years ago, once they moved into Aspen Creek, the new elementary school, there was some discussions about maybe the city buying that and turning it into a rec center. Those discussions kind of dissipated, and currently what the public schools told me is they've rezoned it and have it on the market to sell, but they haven't had any buyers for it right now. So that's kind of the status of Indian Springs.
Thank you, Kenny. Okay, just 4 more questions. We wanted to try to keep this to 2 hours, so I think we're doing good on time. I thought plans were made to widen 101st both east of Elm and west of Aspen years ago. I do know that the plans and specifications are being prepared to widen from 2 lanes to 3 lanes on 101st from Aspen to Olive, and I'm going to ask Kenny to give an update on exactly where those plans and specifications are, because that was in a 2014 general bond obligation that was approved by voters.
Yes, I'll answer the part east of Elm right now. If you remember a few years ago, about 2008, 2009, that was a 2-lane road with, most people would call those ditches on either side of the road. I would have called them canyons. If you drove out that way, that road for the mile from Elm to 9th Street, or Lynn Lane, has been widened from 2 to 5. And then about a year or 2 later, the city went on and widened from 9th to 23rd, which is Lynn Lane to County Line, from 2 to 3. So that part has been completed, and I do believe that's a 2008 bond that did that. The second question is Aspen to Olive. Those plans are basically 95% complete. We're still trying to acquire, I think, 1 additional right-of-way. And once that is acquired, then we plan to go into construction. It will not be this year. Our schedule right now looks like it'd be in the next fiscal year to construct that mile.
Thank you, Kenny. Pass that down to Michael Skates, please. Okay, this next question was, when was the last time the comprehensive plan for the city was updated? So the answer was 2008, and there was a supplemental in 2012, and I'd like for Michael to talk about what we have in the works right now.
The comprehensive plan is a plan that governs the city as far as development. It has all aspects of the city in it, including public safety facilities, parks, streets, highways, and other development items. We were fortunate enough this year from the council and the city manager to support moving forward with a new comprehensive plan and what we call Plan Vision 40. And so we've gone out for bid, and we selected a consultant to help us with the update to our comprehensive plan. We feel like that's going to be about a 24-month process. Right now, we're in the process of working with the consultant to iron out what the actual cost will be and the details and specific items within that project. The comprehensive plan will look at 2040. It's going to look at innovative ideas that we're only starting to see the first of, and that is vehicles that drive themselves. How is transportation going to change over the next 20 years? Health. How does health impact a community? And I don't know about y'all, but I don't like being last. You know, I like to be first in everything. And when I hear about schools, when I hear about health, and all these different things, it upsets me, and we're going to look at these things in the future to try to identify in our comprehensive plan how we can set forth the city with improvements and be visionary over the next 20 years.
You want to add something, Kenny? Okay. All right, these two questions are kind of long, and I apologize, they're a little hard to read. This question it's about walkability. XYZ generation. Autos mean people need a shopping/entertainment with well-planned, quote-unquote, walkability. That is the vision. What is the vision to achieve this in South Broken Arrow? Pillars of walkability. Number 1, useful. Number 2, safe. Number 3, comfortable. Number 4, useful. Please mention the need to attract younger generations for vitality. And so I'm going to ask, I like Wes's response to this, because we talk about the importance of walkability and the importance of attracting millennials on a very regular basis. So I'd ask him to answer this question.
Thank you. It just so happens a group of us within the last week had a full-day conversation on this very topic as a part of an exercise on ways to move our community forward. And the walkability connectivity issue is not just a South Broken Arrow issue. It's a Broken Arrow issue, no matter where you live. And we have inside our organization, the city, a great passion for improving walkability and connectivity, connecting our trails from the turnpike into the central part of the city where you can ride without having to put it in the back of a truck. So I think what you're going to see us do is, as we move forward over the next few years in our planning, look for ways to greatly enhance that. The fact that the younger generation, I have a 23-year-old daughter, she hadn't even had a car at graduate school the last year because she walks everywhere. They want that ability to get out and walk to do their shopping. Now, we're kind of spread out in Broken Arrow, like this part of the country. The lack of density precludes, in many cases, our ability to create easily walkable neighborhoods. But we do have a great start here because the planning that goes in Broken Arrow requires sidewalks today on both sides of the street, not just one like a city to the west of us here. So a lot of work has gone into this, but we still have to do a better job connecting those dots.
Thank you, Wes. Okay, and the final question, which is a great question, it's several parts here. It says, when are you going to improve east-west roads within the community? There is no question that our city, and what I call the transportation network, needs to be improved, both east and west and north and south. The answer to that question is we do have several projects that are underway to actually try to improve the traffic on going east and west. One of them is 91st, which I'm going to ask Kenny to update everyone on where 91st is, and then we'll talk a little bit about how to go forward.
That is a great question. For those that have been around for years, Broken Arrow has always been a north-south community, and the east-west streets have suffered over the time. As Mr. Spurgeon said, right now we have some bond money and we have a project in place, Washington 91st from Garnett to Olive. That project is about done with the design. We're probably about 90% through. We actually are putting a trail on the north side, as Wes just talked about, some of that connectivity. I would anticipate that project going to construction probably within a year. We still have a little bit of right-of-way to gather. And we're also doing the design on the very east part of that. So that would be Washington from Aspen to Elm. So we're already starting that design. And it has been mentioned a little bit, but that would be a future bond package, and I'll leave that to you to discuss.
Okay. Thank you, Kenny. We want to talk about reality. To widen a road from 2 lanes to 3 lanes for a mile is approximately $3 million. To widen a road from 2 lanes to 5 lanes, if there's not a bridge structure involved, is $5 million. If you add a bridge structure to that, you can easily get to $5.5 to $6 million. Respectfully, the city does not have an unlimited ATM. When we do road projects, we have to come to the voters and ask for your support for the widening of these roads. We're in that process right now. We recognize the council has said in the package they would like to see 81st, the finishing 81st from Garnett all the way to Aspen, or Houston, I should say, all the way to Aspen. They'd like to see Olive. They also want some additional improvements made to some of the roads in South Broken Arrow. We have a lot of north and south roads, for example, 121st to 131st on Aspen, where there's tremendous growth potential, needs to be widened. There's also a need to widen from Aspen from 121st from Aspen to Olive. And so all of this is being put together as a part of a package to present to you. The takeaway I would like for you tonight is that we are going to award a contract at the next meeting to bring in a company to help us with public education, and we're going to be doing a survey of our citizens over the next 4 months, asking you what you believe the priorities are. And we're going to be making phone calls, and also we're going to give information on our website for you to complete the survey so we can determine what the priorities should be for our community. And a part of that is our transportation system. And so that's something that this council and the councils before have said we need to improve. It's just extremely expensive when you talk about what it costs to go from 2 to 3 or 2 to 5. Okay, the next part of this is talks about elementary schools within 2 miles of 101st and Elm. Why not look at pre-teen activities such as an incredible pizza or a trampoline park? We will certainly talk to the school district about those types of improvements. Why are power lines not put underground? Look at Lynn Lane from 71st to 61st. Telephone poles are leading every which way. Lynn Lane is the next road that's going to go from 2 to 5 lanes from 71st down to 61st to finish where flight safety at going south. We have moved forward with and completed the right-of-way, and we are in the process of the utility companies are going to start to remove their utilities that are in the way, and I anticipate, I'm going to ask Kenny to confirm, is that we should be award a contract for widening from 2 to 5 by the end of this year.
Yes, Lynn Lane from Kenosha 71st south to Houston 81st. We have all the right-of-way. Utility companies, PSO will be out there moving utilities probably in the next 3-4 months. We anticipate advertising late this fall, middle this fall, October range. We hope to be in construction schedule-wise around December. We'll take about 10 months to go through that. Now, the question about locating underground, we've asked PSO several times, can you do this? It's their utility, not ours. It's costly to go underground on Tucson, right up here. When we were looking at the Warren Theater in that area, we talked about going underground. They were actually in their own utility easement. The difference to move them outside of the easement and with the poles was about $1 million. To put it underground was $3 million, and since they were in easement, that would have been our cost. So poles were pretty good right there. If it's up to them, they're going to go a little bit cheaper, but we have reached out to them many times.
The next question is, the fence line looks terrible along Highway 51. We agree. And as a result, I asked Mr. Schwab to reach out to the Department of Transportation, because that is their property, to ask them if we can get permission to try to remove some of those scrub trees that are along there that take away from what I would call beautification. So we recognize that. I know Kenny has spoken to them. There is an application process that we have to complete in order to remove any of the trees or any of the underbrush that takes away from being able to look at basically how beautiful our city is. And the final question in this one was, where is the planning infrastructure for manufacturing? The FedEx building road is terrible. Houston from Lynn Lane to Old Highway 51 definitely needs to be widened. And there has been some discussions of the city of looking at the creation of a TIF district in that area to try to capture some of the dollars, because Norm and, more importantly, Mr. Smithwick and his team are starting to see a lot of manufacturers show interest in the development of that area. And so that's something you're going to be hearing a lot about, and the city's actually going to be looking at that area for some potential incentives, because there is with FedEx going there, it's like the herd mentality that Danny talked about. There are other businesses that are very interested in that as well. Would you like to add something on that, Wes?
Other than to just say the FedEx project, they selected that site on their own? Yeah, FedEx, that is not a location that we actually recruited here, mainly because there are not very many jobs there, and the few that are there are not very high-paying jobs. So they selected that site on their own. When that happens, it puts the city behind the 8 ball on infrastructure, and that will have to be addressed. We've had conversations about that as we work to recruit additional industry there.
Thank you, Wes. And the final question is, when will we have sidewalks on both sides of Elm from 131st to 101st? The council members have talked to me, and I've been out to see it, is that, as has been mentioned by Mr. Smithwick, is there are areas of our community that we lack connectivity. And so building sidewalks are extremely expensive proposition. And so a part of the package that my office is going to submit to the council is funds to put before the voters about reducing or eliminating that connectivity that we lack in some areas. It's because we see that. Although we have some bike lanes that are going to be put in, and we're trying to actually improve the walkability, there are many areas of our community that are not connected that require folks to walk out into the street or to walk on the grass, and you can see where the path is worn. And so one of the things the city needs to do is we need to do a better job of that, and so that's something that will come before the council for their consideration for early next year. So with that, Mayor, that's all I have, and I just want to turn it back over to you, sir.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight. We're going to item 5, remarks and inquiries by governing body members. This is your city. It's so important that you come and educate yourself on what's going on and give us input. That's how we know how you feel and what you want to see and what we can possibly do. But hopefully you learned something tonight about what we're doing and all the things that we continue to do to try and grow all of Broken Arrow. I don't know if anyone else has any comments or wants to say anything else. I'll turn it over to the rest of the council.
It's like less is more.
Yeah. Well, I would just say this. I live down here. I'm your neighbor if you live down here, and I care about this. I know everyone on this dais does, but I live down here, and I want to hear from you, and I'm happy to carry the water on this, because I think this is an issue that is important to all of us. If you're here, it is. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being my neighbor.
And likewise, I've never looked at it as North and South Broken Arrow at all. We just try to help wherever the development. You see from tonight that there's times that they want to come in and develop a certain area, everything just falls into place. But I will assure you that for the last several years, the southern part of Broken Arrow has been a concern for me, in that we do need to have additional development. So it is on the top of the radar, and we're looking at it, you know what I mean, and given every availability. And the city is going to be available to help when that development does come, when it comes.
I guess I'll talk. I'm Deborah Wempe. I'm your newest city councilor, and just elected in April, so I'm still learning. But I do have a social site for Broken Arrow that I hear a lot of what people are thinking, and I'm really excited to see so many people here. If we don't hear what you guys want, then we can't do anything about it. So it's really great to see this room packed and the overflow in the hallway there. But I just want to thank you guys for all coming out, and just always be in contact with us and let us know your thoughts.
Next item we have is remarks and updates from city manager. Michael?
I've spoken enough. I just want to say this, folks. What we're trying to do is we're trying to over-communicate. And with our city council meetings being televised, with our website, with our city council highlights, with our new segment Broken Arrow in Motion, with the fact that we're on Nextdoor, with our social media. In today's environment, we're trying to do the very best we can to over-communicate to the citizens on what we're trying to do in the city, because the quality of life in this community, although we have challenges, it is second to none to anywhere in this state and anywhere in the Midwest. And so I think we need to take away from this meeting the fact that so many people, well over 200 people that can show up and show an interest and a concern for the city is amazing. And so I just want to thank everybody for coming on behalf of the administration, and hopefully we'll all get a chance to see you around town.
One more motion? Motion second. Roll call, please. Yes. Thank you.